All right, so let's get into something kind of different today.
Okay.
We're going to be looking at haunted houses.
Ooh.
So we've got 5 haunted houses lined up today from this video,
Okay.
each with its own creepy history. And you're here to help us kind of unpack not just the stories themselves,
Yeah.
but also, like, why are they so interesting to us? Like, what do they tell us about ourselves and, like, the psychology behind it?
Totally. Yeah. Like, why are we drawn to these tales in the first place?
Exactly.
What do they tell us about, like, our fears about ourselves, maybe our longing for something beyond just, like, our everyday lives?
I love that, a longing for something beyond the everyday.
Yeah.
So Mr. Nightmare kicks things off with this house called the Dudley House.
Okay.
It was built back in 1747, so the place is like steeped in history and
Oh.
some unsettling stories.
Okay.
It's on the edge of this forest called Dark Entry Forest.
Oh, just the name already.
Right.
Sounds creepy.
And this forest has a reputation for people going missing.
Oh, wow. Like vanishing without a trace.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
And I think that, like, taps into some of our deepest fears, right? Like not knowing what happened.
Oh, absolutely.
That lack of closure, the vulnerability of just being out there, and something happens and no one knows.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that a place like that would have all these stories about it.
It's like a breeding ground for those kinds of tales.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the stories about Dark Entry Forest don't stop there.
Okay.
People report hearing screams coming from the trees,
Oh, my God.
feeling like unseen hands are pushing them.
Oh, no.
And some even say they see these, like, orbs of light.
Yeah, those kinds of experiences, while unsettling, they're actually pretty common in reports of haunted locations.
Okay.
It's often what paranormal investigators will call perceptual phenomena,
Oh, interesting.
where people are sensing things that might not actually have like a physical basis in reality.
Okay, so their mind is kind of playing tricks on them a little bit.
It could be,
Okay.
or it could be something else. But what's really interesting about the Dudley house itself
Yeah.
is there was a report of someone hearing like this frantic banging on a window
Oh, God.
from inside the house. But when they looked, there was no one there.
Oh, no.
Just the blinds like pressing against the glass with each bang.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah.
That's really creepy.
So
So it's not even like a person standing there
Right.
banging on the window. It's just...
like an invisible force.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
The Dudley House is owned now by the Dark Entry Forest Association,
Oh, wow.
and it's heavily patrolled by authorities
Okay.
who warn people, like, stay away.
Don't go there.
Right.
But it seems like those warnings have kind of backfired.
Yeah.
They've just added to the mystique.
Absolutely. Like, it's forbidden.
Yeah.
You can't go there.
Exactly.
So, of course, you want to go there.
It makes it even more alluring,
Right.
especially for people who are like thrill seekers.
Exactly.
Or looking for something like a brush with the paranormal.
Mm.
It just plays into our natural curiosity and that desire to see what's hidden.
Okay, so speaking of places shrouded in mystery and allure, our next stop is the Harlow House,
Okay.
a Hollywood mansion that's got both glamour and tragedy in its history.
Oh, Hollywood Mansion.
It's going to take us back to the 1930s,
I love.
like a little time warp
Yeah.
to the world of movie stars and these lavish parties.
Ah, the golden age of Hollywood.
Yes.
So much glitz and glamour. Yeah. But also so much hidden darkness.
Right.
And it sounds like this Harlow house really embodies that duality.
Exactly. So on the surface, you have this, like, stunning mansion
Right.
owned by Paul Byrne, who is a big-time Hollywood producer,
Right.
and his wife, Jean Harlow, who is a major starlet.
Big names.
Big names. They have this, like, extravagant wedding,
Okay.
but just 2 months later, Paul Byrne is found dead in the house
Oh, my God.
under mysterious circumstances.
What happened?
Officially, it was ruled a suicide,
Well,
but all these rumors started flying around about foul play,
oh, wow.
like maybe a hidden love affair.
Juicy,
Right.
classic Hollywood scandal.
And even a possible connection to Byrne's ex-wife, who tragically killed herself shortly after.
So there are all these layers of tragedy and mystery surrounding this death.
Yes.
And I bet that really fuels the belief that something might be amiss in the house.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, there are unanswered questions.
Yeah.
And maybe the spirits of the past are still looking for some kind of resolution.
Right. Like they can't rest
Exactly.
because things aren't settled.
Mm.
And the tragic events associated with the Harlow house, they don't end there.
Oh, no.
Jean Harlow herself died a few years later.
I'm so sad.
So it's like another layer of sorrow just gets added to the house's history.
Wow, yeah, that's heavy.
And then years later, it was owned by Sharon Tate.
Oh, my goodness.
who also met a very tragic and violent end.
It's like this house is cursed or something.
Oh.
Like it's attracted all this tragedy.
So we have this place with like beauty and fame, right?
Yeah.
But it's shadowed by multiple deaths and all these unanswered questions.
It's no wonder that people say they feel this unsettling presence in the house.
Right.
Or see like shadowy figures lurking in the windows.
Yeah, like is it just our imagination?
Right? Are we just projecting those stories onto the house?
Or is it something more?
Or those glimpses of something supernatural? It's hard to know for sure.
It's a tough question to answer.
Yeah. But regardless of your beliefs about ghosts, the Harlow House is a powerful reminder
Yeah.
of how places can kind of absorb the energy of events. Like the past can really leave a mark on the present.
Absolutely. Okay, so speaking of places with like this palpable sense of the past, our next stop is pretty different, but it's equally intriguing.
I am intrigued.
It's a former funeral home in Connecticut.
A funeral home.
Yeah, get ready for this one.
Okay.
Because this one might make you squirm a bit.
I am ready to squirm.
So it was built in 1916 and served as a funeral home for decades.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't until 1986 that a family, the Sneedekers,
Tweakers.
bought it and decided to make it their home.
Oh, so they turned a funeral home into a house?
Yeah.
That's bold.
And that's when things started to get really creepy.
I can imagine.
Like funeral homes already have that certain weight to them.
Yeah.
You know, that sense of like solemnity of
Yeah.
death and the passage of time.
Right, it's where we say goodbye to loved ones.
Exactly. It's where we confront our own mortality.
Yeah. It makes sense that a place like that would have stories of hauntings.
And it wasn't just the history of the house that was unsettling.
Okay.
Like when the Sneakers moved in, they found all sorts of leftover mortuary items.
Whoa,
Like coffin handles, embalming tools,
that's creepy.
even a drainage pit for bodily fluids.
Ugh, no thank you.
It's like the house was still holding on to these physical reminders of its past.
Oh, absolutely. It's like those objects were just imbued with the energy of all the deaths that happened there.
Right.
So creepy.
And it didn't take long before the Sneedekers started experiencing what they believed to be paranormal phenomena.
Like what kind of stuff?
At first, it was just like doors and windows opening and closing on their own.
Okay, that's classic.
Yeah.
Like those ambiguous events that could just be explained away as drafts or the house settling.
Yeah, but our imaginations start to run wild.
Totally.
But it sounds like things escalated pretty quickly.
They did.
They started hearing disembodied voices, screams and cries coming from empty rooms or closets.
Oh gosh, that's terrifying.
Like, imagine hearing that,
No, thank you.
especially coming from an empty room.
It's like someone or something is trying to communicate from beyond the veil.
It taps into that primal fear of the unseen, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Like what's lurking just out of sight.
Mhm.
And the most unsettling part of this story is about the Sneedekers' oldest son.
Okay.
He was undergoing radiation treatment at the time.
Oh, wow.
And after they moved into the funeral home, his personality like took a dark turn.
Really?
Yeah, he became withdrawn, angry.
I'll go.
Started writing disturbing poetry,
Oh, wow.
and he even attacked his cousin.
That's so chilling.
It makes you wonder, like, could the house,
Yeah.
with its history and its association with death,
Right.
have actually had an impact on his mental and emotional state?
Or are we just trying to find an external explanation for what was going on inside of him?
Right. Like, is it the house or is it something else?
It's a really difficult question.
It is.
And it shows how complex this whole topic is.
Absolutely.
Like our minds, our environment, the stories we tell ourselves.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
We may never know for sure if the house played a role,
Right.
but it definitely adds another layer of creakiness to this whole thing.
For sure. It's a fascinating but unsettling detail.
It makes you think, like, what's the tipping point?
Yeah.
When do you decide a place is just too much?
When do you say this is too creepy, I got to get out of here?
Like, too steeped in this unsettling energy.
Right. Like, is it worth it to stay in a place that feels so heavy with the past?
Exactly. And the Sneedekers, they decided to move out that same year.
Probably a good call.
Yeah, I think so too. Sometimes it's better to just acknowledge the power of a place, even if we don't understand it.
I agree.
All right, so are you ready for a change of scenery?
I am.
Our next stop takes us to the shores of West Bay Lake in Wisconsin,
Ooh, Wisconsin.
where this beautiful lakeside mansion awaits.
A lakeside mansion.
Yeah, it sounds idyllic, right?
Sounds peaceful. Uh-oh, there's that. But
I know you know me too well.
I've heard enough of these stories to know that peaceful is not usually how they end.
Exactly.
So what's the catch with this lakeside mansion?
This is the Summer Wind House, built in 1916.
Okay.
Just picture it, a grand mansion nestled in the trees. overlooking this peaceful lake.
Sounds like a dream vacation spot.
Right.
A perfect escape from the everyday world.
Oh, here it comes.
Despite its serene setting, the Summerwind house has a history that's as turbulent as the lake during a storm.
Okay, so peaceful on the outside,
Ah.
stormy on the inside.
Exactly, and it all started with the very first owner, Robert Lamont.
Okay.
One night, he hears this rattling sound coming from the basement door. He thinks it's an intruder, so he grabs his pistol and fires 2 shots through the door.
Wow, talk about a fight or flight response.
Right.
That's intense.
It's like our minds go into overdrive when we're in unfamiliar or isolated environments.
Yeah, our senses are heightened. We start imagining all sorts of things. Exactly. And we're ready to perceive any threat.
Right, even if it's not really there.
And in Lamont's case,
Yeah.
the threat turned out to be nothing.
Oh, so he just shot at nothing?
Pretty much.
Wow.
But the bullet hole stayed in that door for years.
Really?
Yeah, like a constant reminder of that night.
It's like a physical manifestation of his fear
Yes.
and the mystery that still lingered in that house.
And it's interesting how even little details like bullet holes
Yeah.
can become so significant when we're talking about hauntings.
Hmm.
They become like clues to a larger story.
Yeah, like puzzle pieces that we're trying to fit together.
And in the case of the Summerwind house, those bullet holes were just the beginning.
Okay, so there's more.
Oh, yeah. The story gets much stranger.
I'm listening.
The house was sold a couple of times after Lamont,
Okay.
and things seemed relatively quiet until the early 1970s when a family, the Henshaws, moved in,
The Henshaws.
and they're 6 months in the Summerwind house.
Oh, 6 months. That doesn't sound good.
It wasn't peaceful at all.
So what kind of phenomena did they experience?
Right from the moment they moved in,
Okay.
they reported all these strange things.
Like what?
Vague shapes moving down the hallways,
Oh, gosh.
mumbled voices in empty rooms that would stop when they entered.
Oh, that's creepy.
And of course, doors and windows opening and closing on their own.
The classics.
Right.
But I'm curious, were there any specific events that really stood out to them?
Well, they said they saw a ghostly woman floating back and forth past a set of French doors.
A ghostly woman.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty unsettling.
But one detail that really gets to me is this window that just had a mind of its own.
A window with a mind of its own. What do you mean?
It kept raising and lowering itself no matter what they did.
What?
Yeah, like they would close it and it would just open again
Its own?
on its own.
That's so weird.
It's like something out of a movie. And this wasn't just like a subtle movement either.
Okay.
The Father Arnold became so desperate to stop this window that he actually drove a nail through the window casing to try to seal it shut.
He nailed the window shut.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a serious commitment to keeping a window closed.
He was at his wit's end.
I can imagine.
It's like the house itself was against them.
Yeah, like they had to fight for control over their own home.
And that struggle, that battle for control against these unseen forces, that's something we see a lot in haunted house stories.
It's a classic theme.
It's what makes them so relatable, so terrifying, and so fascinating.
It's like it taps into that fear of losing control, being at the mercy of something we don't understand.
Yeah. And in the case of the Summerwind house, it seems like the Henshaws ultimately lost that battle.
Oh, so they moved out.
They only lasted 6 months before they packed up and left.
Wow. Yeah, 6 months is not a long time.
And that brings us to our final and arguably most infamous haunted house.
Okay, hit me with it.
The Villisca Axe Murder House.
The Villisca Axe Murder House, just the name sounds ominous.
I know, right?
What makes this one so infamous?
Well, it's a combination of factors.
Okay, but the story starts with a tragedy so horrific that it's left a mark on the house and the town of Villisca, Iowa. All right, I'm ready for this. So picture this, a quiet residential street, a seemingly normal white frame house.
Okay.
But there's something off about it.
What do you mean?
The lights are always out.
Okay.
The doors and windows are shut tight.
Well, that's creepy.
And there's this sense of unease hanging in the air.
Yeah, you can just feel it.
Like the house is holding its breath, guarding this dark secret.
Okay, what's the secret?
This is the house where back in 1912, an entire family was brutally murdered.
Oh my God.
Josiah Moore, his wife, their 4 children, and 2 young guests.
A whole family.
They were all killed with an axe.
That's horrific.
And it's the kind of tragedy that just shocks a community to its core.
Yeah, like a wound that never really heals.
It's no wonder that this place would become a magnet for ghost stories.
Absolutely.
The brutality of the murders,
Yeah.
the fact that the case is still unsolved.
Oh, it all adds to the chilling legacy of the Villisca Axe murder house.
It's like a place where the line between the living and the dead is
Mm.
just incredibly thin.
Exactly. And it's become a destination for people seeking out the macabre.
Yeah, that's what they call dark tourism.
Yes.
It's fascinating how people are drawn to places associated with death and tragedy.
It's a complex form of tourism,
It is.
with motives ranging from just morbid curiosity
Yeah.
to a genuine desire to connect with history and our own mortality.
And to face our fears.
Exactly.
It's like testing the boundaries of what we're comfortable with.
And the Villisca Axe murder house definitely offers a potent dose of all of that.
So what kind of hauntings do people report there?
We're talking disembodied voices,
Oh, yeah?
especially children's voices.
Oh my gosh.
Objects moving on their own, lamps falling,
Okay.
ladders shifting positions, and even things flying through the air.
Wow, like poltergeist activity.
Yeah, and some visitors claim to have captured audio or video evidence, while others say they've actually communicated with the spirits.
That's wild.
And it's interesting how these reports often reflect our deepest fears,
Yeah, like our anxieties about violence, death, and the unknown.
especially in a place like this where those fears were so violently realized.
Right. It's not surprising that people would interpret any strange sight or sound
Yeah.
as evidence of the supernatural.
It's like the house itself is amplifying those fears.
Yeah, it blurs the lines between what's real and what our minds are creating.
So we've explored 5 very different houses,
Yeah.
each with its own unique brand of creepy.
Yeah, what's your biggest takeaway from all these stories?
What strikes me the most is the power of place.
The power of place.
Like the history, the events that happen within these walls,
Yeah.
they seem to shape the hauntings,
Mhm.
the types of phenomena that are reported.
That's fascinating.
It's almost as if these houses become these repositories of memory,
Yeah.
holding on to the energy of past events, both joyful and tragic.
And those echoes of the past can manifest in ways we just can't explain.
Do you think some places are just more susceptible to these kinds of occurrences than others?
That's the big question, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like, is it something about the architecture, the materials,
Mm-hmm.
the location itself,
Or is it just us?
right? Are we just projecting our beliefs and fears onto these places?
Or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, it's a question that has haunted researchers for centuries,
Literally.
and I don't know if we'll ever have a definitive answer.
But it's that mystery that keeps us coming back for more, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It sparks our curiosity, makes us question what's possible.
And it reminds us that we don't have all the answers.
Exactly, and that's okay.
Yeah, embracing the unknown is part of the fun,
Totally.
and sometimes it can lead to amazing discoveries.
So that brings us to the end of part 1 of our deep dive into haunted houses.
Already.
I know time flies when you're talking about ghosts.
It does, and I can't wait to continue the conversation.
We'll be back soon for part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the psychology of hauntings.
Stay tuned. You know, it's amazing how as we get deeper into these stories, they really tap into something primal in us.
Right, like they get under your skin.
Yeah, and it's not just about being scared. It's like they make us think about these big questions.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, what happens after we die?
Exactly.
Uh.
Or are we truly alone in the universe?
Or is there something more out there that we just can't grasp?
These huge mysteries that have haunted humanity since the beginning.
And it's crazy how these simple ghost stories
Mhm.
can bring up those huge questions.
They really make you think.
But we also got to acknowledge, like, they're entertaining.
Oh, totally.
Like, there's a reason people love ghost stories.
Yeah, we've been telling them forever.
They give us thrills, chill.
It's like a safe way to explore our fears.
Right. It's like that roller coaster analogy we talked about before.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you get the adrenaline, but you know you're not actually in danger.
It's that perfect balance. So I'm curious, from a psychological perspective,
Yeah.
why do you think these haunted house stories are so captivating?
That's a good question. Well, we've touched on a few things already.
Mhm.
Like our primal fears, the need to understand our world, the allure of the unknown.
Right.
But I also think the setting itself plays a role.
What do you mean?
Well, houses are supposed to be our safe spaces, right?
Yeah, like our sanctuary.
Exactly. So the idea of that safety being broken
Hmm.
by something we can't see or control, that's unsettling.
You're right. It's that violation of a safe space that
Yeah.
really gets to us.
It makes you question everything you thought you knew.
Exactly. And I think that's where the power of suggestion comes in.
Oh, absolutely.
Like when we hear a house is haunted, Our minds start to interpret every little thing as a sign.
Right, the wind rattling a window, suddenly it's a ghost trying to get in.
Or a creaking floorboard. It's footsteps in the night.
It's like our brains are wired to see patterns.
Yeah, even if those patterns aren't really there.
But that's part of what makes it fun, right?
Oh, totally. It's that mix of excitement and fear.
That dance between what we can explain and what remains a mystery.
It keeps us on the edge of our seats.
But it seems like some people are more sensitive to this stuff than others.
That's true. Why do you think that is?
Maybe some people are just more open to the possibility of the paranormal.
Yeah, like they're more willing to believe.
And maybe some people are just more sensitive to energy in general.
It could be personality beliefs, past experiences, even cultural background.
All of that plays a role.
There's research that suggests people who are more open to new experiences.
Okay.
They tend to report more paranormal experiences.
That makes sense. Like they're more imaginative, more curious.
Exactly. And I bet our personal histories play a part too.
Oh, for sure. Like if you grew up hearing ghost stories
Hmm.
or had a creepy experience as a kid.
You might be more attuned to those things.
Absolutely.
It's like our brains are shaped by those early encounters.
So it's not just about the places themselves. It's
Right.
about who we are, what we bring to the experience.
Exactly our individual filters for how we see the world.
And let's not forget about the power of storytelling.
Oh, that's huge.
Think about how Mr. Nightmare tells these stories.
Yeah.
The music, the tone of his voice, the dramatic pauses.
He knows how to create suspense.
He's a master at drawing you in, making you feel like you're right there in the story.
That's the mark of a great storyteller.
It really is.
They can transport us to another world.
So after diving into all these spooky tales,
Mm-hmm.
have you ever had any personal experiences?
Oh, you mean like something I couldn't explain?
Yeah, anything that made you question your own skepticism?
Well, I've always considered myself a pretty rational person,
Mm-hmm.
a scientist at heart.
Right.
But there have been a few times where I encountered something that just didn't make sense.
Really?
Yeah, I once visited an old abandoned asylum for a research project,
Oh, wow.
and the atmosphere was so heavy, so oppressive.
As you could feel it in the air?
Yeah, it was like this lingering sadness and despair.
And you felt like you were being watched.
Exactly like there were unseen presences all around us.
Did anything specific happen?
Not really. It was more of a feeling.
But a strong one?
Yeah, and I wasn't the only one who felt it.
Oh, really?
Several of my colleagues reported similar experiences.
So it wasn't just your imagination?
Right. We tried to explain it away, but there was a part of me that couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to it.
It's like sometimes no matter how rational we try to be,
Mm-hmm.
there are just experiences that defy logic.
And leave us with a sense of wonder.
Or maybe even a touch of fear.
That's what keeps us coming back to these stories and these places.
That possibility that there might be something more out there.
Something beyond our understanding.
I think that's a healthy impulse.
Me too.
It keeps us curious, open to new possibilities.
It reminds us that we don't have all the answers
Exactly.
and that there are still mysteries to be explored.
And who knows, maybe in those mysteries,
Mm-hmm.
we might discover something profound about ourselves.
About the nature of reality.
About our connection to everything.
Beautifully said.
It's that sense of interconnectedness, that possibility of something more.
That's at the heart of what makes these haunted house stories so compelling.
Absolutely.
They remind us that we're part of something bigger,
Yeah.
that the past is always with us.
And that the line between the seen and unseen,
Might be more fluid than we realize.
and maybe by embracing that mystery,
Mm-hmm.
we can find a deeper connection to the world around us.
And to the infinite possibilities that lie within.
I love that. On that note of infinite possibilities,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to take a short break,
Okay.
but don't worry, we'll be back soon for the third and final part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
We'll revisit some of these chilling details and explore what it all means for you, the listener.
Can't wait.
Stay tuned. We'll leave you with a question to ponder.
Ooh, a question.
If you could visit one of these haunted houses,
Okay.
knowing all the stories and the risks,
Mm-hmm.
which one would you choose and why? Welcome back to our deep dive into haunted houses.
We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
We have from vanishing figures in a creepy forest to a self-moving window in a lakeside mansion.
It's amazing how each story is so unique.
Yeah.
But they all seem to tap into that same primal fear of the unknown.
And the way those fears show up
Mm-hmm.
can be so specific to the place and its history.
Like take the Connecticut funeral home, for example.
Oh, man, that one was just unsettling.
It was.
Just thinking about all those leftover mortuary items, the drainage pit,
Yeah, it's like the house was physically holding on to those remnants of death.
It's creepy.
It really makes you think about residual energy.
Yeah.
Like if a place can actually absorb and hold on to the emotions and experiences of the people who are there.
Especially a place like a funeral home.
Right, where grief and sorrow were a constant presence for so long.
And then you have the Dudley house
Mm-hmm.
with its history of people disappearing
Yeah.
and that creepy report of the unseen banging on the window.
Oh, yeah, that one was chilling.
It's like you can picture it.
You-
Being trapped inside trying to get someone's attention, but no one can see you.
It's like a fear of being completely alone and forgotten.
Lost in a place where no one can find you.
And that ties back to the forest itself. Dark entry, with his reputation for people vanishing without a trace.
It's almost like the forest and the house are working together.
Yeah, both feeding into that sense of mystery and dread.
And then there's the Harlow house,
Oh, yeah, the Hollywood Mansion.
a place where glamour and tragedy just collide.
It makes you think about how even the most beautiful places can be haunted by the past,
It's like a reminder that darkness can hide anywhere.
even in the most unexpected places.
Like a shadow lurking beneath the surface.
We often think of hauntings as being connected to decay or something like that,
Yeah.
but the Harlow house challenges that.
Yeah, it shows that tragedy can happen anywhere.
And those echoes of tragedy can linger for years and years.
It's like those places have a pull on us,
A narrative gravity.
drawing us in, trying to make sense of the unexplainable.
And then, of course, you have the Summerwind house with that self-moving window.
Oh man, that window.
It's almost like the house was playing with the family.
Yeah, like testing them, pushing them to their breaking point.
It makes you wonder if there's an intelligence behind these hauntings.
Right, like is it just random energy? Or is there something more going on?
Something that's aware of us and trying to communicate.
It's a question that has haunted researchers forever.
Yeah, are we dealing with just energy or something sentient?
That's a creepy thought.
But it's that uncertainty that keeps us so fascinated.
Oh, absolutely. It sparks our curiosity. It makes us question everything.
And speaking of questioning everything,
Mm-hmm.
we can't forget the grand finale, the Villisca Axe murder house.
A place so steeped in tragedy that it's become a hotspot for dark tourism.
It's like people are drawn to that darkness.
Yeah, like they need to touch it to feel connected to that horrific past.
And for some, it's more than just curiosity.
Right. It's a way to process grief or even a form of spiritual exploration.
You mentioned dark tourism earlier.
And it's interesting to think about what motivates people to visit these places.
Yeah, is it all about death and the macabre?
I think it's got to be more than that.
Oh, definitely. It's much more complex.
Like for some people, it's about history.
Yeah.
Wanting to connect with the past in a tangible way.
To feel that connection firsthand.
And for others, it's about facing their fears.
Like testing their limits.
And maybe for some, it's even about finding solace in the face of tragedy.
That's a powerful thought.
It's like these places offer a different perspective on life and death.
Yeah, they make us think about our own mortality.
And they force us to confront those big questions that we usually avoid.
And there's also a social aspect to it, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like sharing your experiences.
The photos, the recordings.
It's a way to connect with others who understand.
It's like saying I was there, I felt it, I'm not alone.
And that feeling of connection can be really important.
Especially when we're talking about something as isolating as death or the paranormal. So as we wrap up this deep dive into haunted houses, what's your biggest takeaway?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's the reminder that reality is way more mysterious than we think.
I like that.
These stories, these places, they challenge everything we think we know.
They push us out of our comfort zones.
And they invite us to be open to the unknown.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
It really has.
And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to explore the world with a little more curiosity and wonder.
To maybe even seek out their own encounters with the unexplained.
Who knows, maybe you'll have your own chilling tale to tell someday.
Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning.
And keep those imaginations running wild.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of haunted houses.
Sweet dreams.